I never thought humiliation could come wrapped in silk and champagne. There I was, sitting in the third row at my younger sister's wedding, wearing the only formal dress I owned, trying my best to blend into a room full of people who all seemed too polished, too perfect. My son, Luca, sat beside me, swinging his legs under the table, wearing a little suit I had to stretch 2 paychecks for. He looked so proud to be there. He thought this day would make us feel like part of the family. Again, maybe I hoped that too. Vivian, my sister, floated through the day like a movie star. She always had that energy, beautiful, charming, adored by everyone, especially our mother. She got the compliments, I got the comparisons, she got the spotlight. I learned how to live in the shadows. Still, I showed up. I smiled, I clapped when they kissed. I kept my voice steady when people asked, "And you're the older sister? You don't look like you have an 8-year-old." Then came the speeches. The groom's best friend went first. Some mildly funny anecdotes, light laughter. Then it was Vivian's turn. I expected something sentimental, something about love, maybe something about growing up together. I even raised my glass in anticipation. I should have known better. She lifted her crystal flute and smiled out over the room. "I want to thank everyone for coming." She began glowing. "It means the world to have you here. And of course, I want to say something special about my big sister." I turned to Luca and smiled at him. He looked up at me with excitement. For a moment, I believed she was about to say something kind. Vivian went on, "All's been such a role model. She's a single mom, strong, independent, and clearly unwanted by anyone else." The room erupted into laughter. My stomach flipped. I thought I misheard her, but she kept smiling like it was the most charming joke she'd ever told. Some guests looked confused, but most laughed harder, clinking their glasses like it was all in good fun. I didn't know where to look. My heart pounded in my ears. Luca tugged at my sleeve and whispered, "Why did she say that about you, Mama?" Before I could answer, my mother added loudly from her table, not missing a beat, "She's a used product, but hey, she still looks good for her age." More laughter, sharper this time. It was the kind of laughter that cuts through skin, the kind that lets you know everyone sees you differently now. Not as a guest, not as family, as entertainment, as pity, as shame. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My face burned, but I refused to let the tears fall. Not in front of my son, not in front of them. My fingers curled into my napkin under the table, gripping it like a rope. I looked around the room, searching for someone, anyone who might meet my eyes and offer something resembling compassion. My grandfather looked down at his plate. My cousin smirked at her phone. Even my uncle, who once told me I reminded him of my late father, didn't look up. Luca looked lost. His little eyebrows furrowed, confused and hurt. That was the part that broke me. Not the words, not the laughter, not the shame. The fact that my son was watching it all, trying to understand why his mother, the woman who kissed his scraped knees and stayed up late helping with his math homework, was being mocked by her own family. I wanted to leave. I wanted to grab Luca's hand, walk out, and never look back. But something in me hesitated. I wanted to speak. I wanted to defend myself, to tell them they didn't know half of what I've carried, what I've survived. But my mouth was dry. My legs were trembling under the table. Then before I could move, I heard a chair scraped back. Callum, the groom, Vivian's perfect polished fiancé, stood up slowly. He didn't look amused. He didn't look at Vivian. He didn't look at the guests. His eyes went straight to me, and something in his face made the entire room freeze. In that instant, I knew something was about to happen. Not a rescue, not a fight, a reckoning. People often think being the older sibling means you lead the way, that you're looked up to. But in our family, I was more of a warning than a role model. I'm Lara. I'm 34, a single mom, and the black sheep of the family. I live in a small, 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of town with my son Luca. He's 8. The best thing that ever happened to me, and the only reason I ever walk back into rooms that once made me feel small. I work 2 jobs, mornings at a local cafe, nights at a front desk for a small hotel. Life isn't glamorous, but it's mine. I make Luca pancakes on Saturdays. I know how to sew patches into his jeans. And he tells me I'm his superhero. That's all I need to keep going. But being a single mom in my family meant I was the one who failed. My mother, Judith, made sure I felt it at every holiday dinner. She believes in appearances. That's why she tells people Vivian's wedding is a second chance for the family name. Vivian is 5 years younger than me. She's beautiful, successful, always had everything handed to her, and always knew how to make it look like she earned it. She's the golden child. Judith adores her. If Vivian sneezed, our mother would bless her with a silk handkerchief. If I got sick, she told me to take vitamins and stop being dramatic. When I got pregnant with Luca, everything changed. I was 25, newly in love with a man who swore he'd stand by me. By month 5, he vanished. No note, no explanation, just gone. My family didn't ask questions. They didn't offer help. They gave me silence, judgment, and I told you so. But I had Luca. And when I held him for the first time, every cruel word they ever said became white noise. Still, deep down, I hoped they'd eventually see me, not just as a single mom, but as someone worth loving. Maybe that's why when I got Vivian's wedding invitation, I said yes. Even though I wasn't part of the bridal party, even though my name was spelled wrong on the RSVP card, even though I had to rent my dress and do my own hair in the bathroom mirror while Luca practiced smiling in his little tie, I told myself it was for closure, that maybe, just maybe, this was my family's way of extending a quiet olive branch. The venue was beautiful, white roses everywhere, gold-accented tableware, a string quartet playing in the distance. Vivian looked like she belonged in a bridal magazine. She was all smiles and sparkle, basking in every compliment and camera flash. When she passed me, her smile faltered. "You made it," she said like she hadn't expected me to. She looked down at Luca and added, "He's getting big." No hug, no warmth, just small talk, then back to the spotlight. Judith didn't acknowledge me at all. She walked past me like I was one of the servers, but Luca was glowing. He thought the chandelier looked like a spaceship. He whispered that Vivian looked like a princess. And when I saw how happy he was just being there, I decided to stay for the reception, even though I could feel that familiar ache of not belonging settle in my chest. I found our table, table 9, near the back by the restrooms. I laughed to myself, fitting. We ate our salads. I helped Luca with his tie when he got chocolate mousse on it. I avoided eye contact with my mother and tried not to listen when I heard my name whispered across clinking glasses. Then the speeches started, and I realized this night wasn't going to be about family unity or forgiveness. It was going to be another stage for Vivian to shine, and I was about to become her punchline. It started the way most wedding speeches do, warm, sugary, just a touch over rehearsed. Vivian stood up with perfect posture, holding a champagne flute in her freshly manicured hand. Her dress shimmered under the reception lights, and the room instantly hushed in anticipation. She smiled, pausing just long enough for everyone to settle. "I want to thank all of you for being here," she began. "It's the happiest day of my life, and I'm surrounded by the people who mean everything to me." I watched from the back table, trying to convince myself that I was included in that sentence. Luca was perched on the edge of his chair beside me, kicking his legs, completely enchanted by the whole fairy tale of it. Vivian continued, speaking sweetly about her new husband, Callum, about love, timing, and fate. I relaxed a little. Maybe, just maybe, this speech wouldn't turn into something cruel. Then she shifted. "And of course," she said with a sly smile, "I want to give a shout out to my big sister. You've always been such a strong example." The spotlight moved. I could feel eyes turning toward me. I sat up a little straighter. I smiled politely. Vivian continued, her voice light but pointed. "She's the bravest woman I know. She raised a child on her own. No husband, no partner, just her. And well, whoever was kind enough to babysit." The room chuckled. My stomach tightened. "But seriously," she added, "it's incredible how she's managed. A single mom, unwanted by anyone, but still showing up." Laughter. Real loud, unfiltered laughter. I felt the breath leave my body. My cheeks flushed hot. My hands froze around the napkin in my lap. I glanced at Luca. He was frowning, confused, glancing around like he was trying to understand why people were laughing at his mom. Then came the worst part. My mother, Judith, laughed louder than anyone. She leaned toward her table mates and added, "Just loud enough to carry. She's a used product, but she still polishes up well." Another wave of laughter, the kind that didn't even try to hide its cruelty. My vision blurred for a second. It felt like being slapped, except no one had touched me. Everyone just laughed around me like it was normal, like it was acceptable. To mock a woman who had spent nearly a decade working herself to the bone to raise her son with dignity and warmth. Like being alone made me less. I looked down at Luca. His smile had vanished. He leaned into me, whispering, "Why did she say that? What does she mean?" I wanted to answer, but I couldn't find the words. I couldn't protect him from this moment. I couldn't shield him from the way our family saw me. That kind of pain doesn't hide well. My heart raced. I looked around the room for an exit, for someone who might step in, someone who might say enough. But no one did. Some people looked uncomfortable, but they didn't speak. They just looked at their glasses, their plates, their phones. Even Grandpa, Norman, who used to call me his little lion when I was a kid, avoided my gaze. He was there, but in that moment, he wasn't with me. I was alone again. The thing is, I could have taken it if it were just me. I've spent years swallowing that kind of treatment. I could have smiled, taken Luca by the hand, and left quietly with my head held high. But seeing the confusion in my son's eyes, seeing him trying to understand why the people clapping and toasting were suddenly laughing at his mother, it cracked something open in me. I stood, not because I knew what I was going to say, not because I wanted to make a scene. I just needed to get out of that room. I needed air. I needed to breathe without choking on the shame they were handing me. I pushed my chair back, my hands trembling. And then from the head table, another chair scraped against the floor. Callum, the groom, stood up. He looked pale. His jaw was tight. He took the microphone from Vivian without asking. The room went silent. It was like the temperature dropped. No more laughter, no more whispers, just this stillness. And I knew whatever came next wasn't part of the plan. Callum stood with one hand still resting on the table and the other clutching the microphone. His eyes were locked on me, not on Vivian, not on Judith, not on the laughing crowd, but on me. For a second, I thought maybe he'd make another joke, smooth things over, say something charming to diffuse the tension. That's what people usually do in my family. Brush it under the rug, pretend it didn't happen. Call it humor, call it tradition. But that's not what he did. He didn't smile. He didn't laugh. His face was tight with something I couldn't quite read. Anger, maybe, but deeper, like disappointment mixed with disbelief. Before he could speak, I pushed my chair in and reached for Luca's hand. I was ready to leave quietly with grace. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me cry or break. I'd done it before. I could do it again. But as I turned to step away, Callum's voice rang out. Low, firm, calm. "Ara, don't go." That stopped me. Everyone turned toward him. Whispers swept the tables like a breeze through dry leaves. Vivian stiffened. Judith narrowed her eyes. The DJ reached toward the volume controls, but stopped when Callum raised a hand. He didn't look at anyone but me. "I can't pretend I'm okay with what just happened," he said. "At my brother's reception, I bent down to pick up a few paper cups that had blown near the edge of the dance floor. Nothing dramatic, nothing unusual. That's when I heard him. That her? His voice was loud enough to cut through the music. She looks like she came to serve, not celebrate. Laughter, not the light kind, but sharp, the kind that stings. I froze, one hand still reaching for a crumpled cup near someone's heel. My back tensed. I didn't even need to turn around to know who it was. Marcus, Jalen's old college buddy. I remembered him from a few game nights at our house back when Jalen still lived with me. Always loud, always careless with his words. And then came her Aunt Rosalind, who never missed a moment to twist the knife just a little deeper. Maybe she should clean up too. She laughed, practically slapping her knee like she'd said the most hilarious thing in the world. My fingers curled around the cup tighter than I meant them to. It was just a cup, but right then it felt like a symbol of every unnoticed thing I'd done to make this wedding happen. Every late night, every early morning, every dollar scraped together from side gigs and skipped meals. I kept my eyes low. Don't cry. Not here, not in front of them. The room didn't pause. The music kept playing. Guests kept laughing. Plates clattered and clinked in celebration. But my world had gone quiet. Someone turned down the volume just for me. I stood up slowly, trying to ignore the heat creeping up my neck, the way my heart pounded in my ears. I could feel eyes on me. Whether it was imagined or not, I didn't know. Why did his words hurt so much? Why did she laugh like that? Did I look that out of place? Was it the plain navy dress I wore because all my money had gone into the catering deposit? Or the scuffed flats I hadn't had time to polish? Was I not enough to be part of this celebration? I caught my reflection in a nearby glass window, my hair frizzing at the sides, a smear of something near my wrist from earlier when I was helping the florist fix the centerpiece. I didn't look like the other women, glowing in glitter and champagne silk. I looked tired. I looked like help. Still, I said nothing. I just kept collecting the cups and napkins scattered across the table near the gift box, forcing my expression into something neutral. Jalen didn't hear it. He was across the room laughing with his new in-laws, completely unaware. And honestly, I didn't want to ruin his day. He didn't know about the hours I spent negotiating with vendors or how I told Liam we couldn't do his birthday party this year because Uncle's big day is coming up. He didn't ask for my help, but he also didn't stop me. So I told myself to be invisible, just for tonight. As I stacked the last of the cups, I caught a glimpse of Liam sitting quietly at our table, swinging his legs beneath the chair. His eyes met mine, serious, still. I gave him a weak smile and looked away. But what I didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Liam had heard everything, and what that boy would do next. No one saw it coming, not even me. My name is Tia. I'm a 35-year-old single mom, full-time office manager, part-time florist, and unofficial family fixer. For most of my life, I've played the background, cleaning up the messes, solving the problems, doing the work no one thanks you for. And that's fine, really. Most of the time, I don't need applause. But that night, that reception, it reminded me just how invisible I'd become. The day had started off beautifully. I'd arrived at the venue before the sun even came up, clipboard in hand, hair barely brushed, and Liam half asleep in the back seat with a Pop-Tart clutched in one hand. The hall was still empty then, quiet and cold. I remember the echo of my footsteps as I walked through the room, visualizing everything we had planned over months of meetings, emails, and budget spreadsheets. My brother Jalen were getting married to a woman named Amara, sweet, soft-spoken, and effortlessly gorgeous. She looked like someone out of a bridal magazine. Their love story had the whole family swooning. How they met at work, bonded over coffee orders, fell in love during lockdown. It was the kind of story that made people believe in fate. And me, I believed in spreadsheets. When Jalen first told me they were struggling to afford the wedding, Of their dreams, I didn't even hesitate. I offered to cover most of the big stuff, the venue deposit, the catering, the decor. I said I had savings. What I didn't say was that those savings were actually meant for a down payment on a better apartment for Liam and me. But Jalen's my little brother. We grew up close, just the two of us and our mom, Diane. She did her best. Things were always tight. I used to walk Jalen home from school, braid his hair when he cried over tangles, and sit through hours of video games just to make him smile. So, when he asked me if I'd help, without really asking, I didn't even blink. Over the months, I became the planner, the bank, and the emotional buffer between our chaotic family and the bride's perfectionist mother. I did it all quietly, out of love. But somewhere deep down, I guess I thought maybe someone would notice. The reception hall sparkled that evening. Gold drapes shimmered behind the head table. Floating candles flickered in tall glass vases. The cake, 5 tiers of vanilla almond perfection, sat like a crown jewel in the corner. People kept saying it looked Pinterest-worthy. They didn't know I'd stayed up until 2 a.m. the night before arranging those centerpieces by hand, pricking my fingers on floral wire until they bled. As guests poured in, all glammed up and giddy, I tried to melt into the background. I wore a simple navy dress I'd bought from a clearance rack 2 years ago. I didn't want to stand out. I wanted the day to shine for Jalen. I sat at a table, near the back with Liam, watching him poke at his mac and cheese with a plastic fork. He looked just like his dad did at that age, brown eyes full of thoughts he didn't know how to say yet. I reached over and straightened his little collar, smiling. To myself, that moment was probably the calmest I felt all day. Just 10 minutes later, Marcus would open his mouth. Aunt Rosalind would laugh and everything would shift. But right then, all I knew was this. My brother was happy. The wedding was beautiful. And I had made it all happen quietly, invisibly. I just didn't realize how invisible until they laughed. I don't know what hurt more, Marcus's words, or how easily everyone laughed. She looks like she came to serve, not celebrate. That line kept echoing in my head as I busied myself with clearing the table. It wasn't even my table, but I guess that was the point. My hands moved automatically, collecting plates and used napkins. Like I was on a shift no one asked me to clock into. I tried to focus on the motion, plate, cup, napkin, trash, because the alternative was thinking too much. And if I started thinking too much, I'd start crying. And I would not cry. Not here. Not tonight. The laughter had died down, at least on the outside. People went back to their drinks and their shrimp cocktails like nothing had happened. But inside, I was burning. I kept glancing at Jalen, hoping maybe he'd seen the look on my face. Maybe he'd ask if I was okay. But he didn't. He was out on the dance floor, pulling Amara close while a slow song played, smiling like a man who had everything he ever wanted. And in that moment, I felt so small. Why did his friend feel comfortable saying that out loud? Why did my aunt think it was funny? I knew I wasn't the glamorous sister. I knew I wasn't anyone's idea of radiant. I came from work. I came from struggle. I came from real life. Maybe I did look like help, but what they didn't see was what I carried. Not just tonight, but for years. All the weight I'd been holding to keep this family standing. I stepped outside for a second, needing air, needing space. The cool breeze hit my face like a slap, and I welcomed it. My eyes burned, but I refused to let the tears fall. I leaned against the sidewall of the building, looking out at the cars in the parking lot. I felt like one of them used, parked, waiting to be useful again. Then I heard the door creak open behind me. Liam. He padded over quietly, dressed in his little gray blazer and blue sneakers, clutching a juice pouch like it was his lifeline. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood next to me, eyes fixed on the sky. "Are you sad, Mommy?" I paused, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. "No," I lied. "Just tired." He nodded slowly. but he didn't believe me. Kids know. He leaned his head against my arm, and we stood there like that, side by side in the dark, pretending not to feel what we felt. When we walked back in, I told myself to push it all down. I wasn't going to let them ruin this day. I wasn't going to make a scene. I went back to clearing the last few cups near the dessert table, trying to make myself as invisible as possible. But I noticed something odd. Liam hadn't gone back to our table. He was still standing near the edge of the dance floor, watching, listening. Then slowly, he started walking toward the stage. I furrowed my brow, setting down the tray in my hands. What was he doing? The DJ was mid-song when Liam reached the front, where the mic stood waiting for the next host or cheesy wedding game, and then he reached up and tapped the mic. It let out a loud, sharp pop. Heads turned, conversation stopped, and my heart sank because something was about to happen. And I had no idea what it was. At first, I thought Liam had wandered off to chase a balloon or maybe ask the DJ for a song. That would have been normal. That would have been safe. But when I saw him standing there, small hands gripping the edge of the stage, one foot nervously tapping the wood, I knew something was different. He looked like he was gathering courage. My breath caught in my throat. I whispered his name under my breath, but he didn't hear me. Or maybe he ignored it. The DJ was mid-laugh chatting with one of the groomsmen when Liam tapped the microphone. Tap, tap. Then that loud, screeching pop, the kind that makes everyone in the room flinch. The room went still like someone had hit the pause button. All eyes turned toward him. My son, my 8-year-old son, standing under fairy lights and chandeliers, clutching a microphone almost too big for his hands. The silence was thick, heavy. I started moving, pushing through the tables toward the front. My heart raced. My mouth was dry. I didn't know what he was going to say, but I knew he'd heard something he shouldn't have. I wanted to stop him, to pull him down, to wrap him up and say, "It's okay, baby, mommy's fine." But I didn't make it in time because he cleared his throat and said, "Hi, my name is Liam. I'm Talia's son." And just like that, I froze. People turned in their chairs. Napkins were slowly lowered to laps. Aunt Rosalind shifted uncomfortably. Marcus looked up confused. Jalen had just started walking back toward his seat with Amara when he stopped dead, in his tracks. My mom helped with everything here. She paid for the food and the flowers and the chairs. She didn't even buy herself a new dress because she wanted it to be pretty for everyone else. His voice shook a little, but he kept going. His small chest puffed out like he was trying to be brave. She even helped my uncle when he didn't have enough money. She just wanted him to be happy. My vision blurred as the tears finally came, hot and fast. I stopped walking. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I just stood there watching this tiny version of me doing something I'd never had the guts to do. Demand to be seen. And I heard someone say she looked like a maid, he said, his voice trembling now. But my mommy's not a maid. She's a superhero. There was no applause, no laughs, just silence. The kind that hurts. Marcus turned beet red. Aunt Rosalind shrunk down in her chair. Even the DJ looked like he wanted to crawl under his table. And Jalen, he looked like someone had poured ice water over his heart. Liam looked around the room like he was waiting for someone to say something, but no one did. So he just nodded, once, like he'd said what he needed to say. Then he handed the mic back to the DJ, climbed down the steps with wobbling legs, and walked straight toward me. I dropped to my knees, wrapped him up so tight I felt his heart beat against mine. "Why'd you do that, baby?" I whispered. He pulled back just enough to look me in the eyes. "Because they forgot," he said, "and I didn't want them to forget." And in that moment, something shifted in the air, not just around me, but in me because, for the first time, I didn't feel invisible anymore. After Liam stepped down from the stage, it felt like the whole reception had shifted on its axis. People weren't laughing anymore. They were staring at him, at me, at the silence that had swallowed up the room like a wave. I was still kneeling on the carpet, holding Liam in my arms when I felt the weight of it all finally land, like I'd been holding up a house on my shoulders and someone had just taken it off without warning. I didn't know what to do. Should I run? Should I explain? Should I pretend none of this had happened? But I didn't have to make a move, because that's when I heard another mic click on a familiar voice. Low, quiet, shaky. It was Jalin. He was standing on the stage now, one hand in his pocket, the other holding the microphone. Amara stood off to the side, her hands clutched in front of her dress, eyes glossy with tears. Jalin cleared his throat, once, twice. He glanced at me, then down at Liam, then back at the crowd. I didn't know what to say at first, he said slowly, voice trembling just enough to make every word stick, because he's right. You could have heard a pin drop. Even the kitchen. Staff had stopped. Someone turned down the music and the whole room leaned in. Taklia, my sister, she didn't just help with this wedding. She made it happen. She paid for it. She planned it. She gave up more than anyone here will ever know, just so today could be perfect for me. My hands shook as I gripped Liam's little shoulder, grounding myself with his warmth. She didn't ask for recognition. She didn't even tell most of you what she did. That's who she is. She's been like that our whole lives. His voice cracked then, and he paused. She raised me more than anyone else did. When Mom had to work 3 jobs, it was Talia who made sure I got to school. She helped me with homework. She made me believe I could be something, and I'm standing here today getting married, living my dream because she gave me the space to chase it. My heart was pounding, my cheeks burned, my vision blurred again. But I didn't wipe the tears this time. And to the people who made her feel small tonight. He paused again, letting that moment hang. Shame on you. She didn't deserve that. None of us did. A soft murmur swept across the room. A few people looked down at their plates. Aunt Rosalind folded her arms, lips pursed tight. Marcus sat frozen, his leg bouncing nervously under the table. Talia, Jalin said, turning to face me fully. I'm so sorry I didn't say this sooner. Thank you. I love you, and I hope you know. You were never invisible to me. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he said them. Honest, raw, no script. The audience erupted, not in applause, not in cheers, but in something better. Silence, respect, and then slowly, one by one, people started walking over to me. A nod, a hand on the shoulder, quiet thank yous from people who hadn't noticed me, all night. But none of that compared to the way Liam looked at me, proud, beaming, like I was the hero of the story. Because in his eyes, I was. The rest of the reception blurred by in moments I wish I could bottle. After Jalin spoke, something in the air shifted. People looked at me differently, not out of pity, but like they were finally seeing me for the first time. Not the tired sister in a clearance dress, not the quiet one in the corner, but the woman who held everything together. Jalin walked over after his speech, pulled me into the kind of hug we hadn't shared since we were kids, the kind that said everything words couldn't. I could feel his heart beating fast, same as mine. I should have told them, he whispered. I should have told you, I nodded. No anger, just release. It's okay, I said softly. You know now. Liam, still clutching my hand, didn't leave my side for the rest of the night. He became my little shadow, smiling shilly every time someone came over to thank him for what he said. Even Amara's mother, who had been borderline frosty with me all day, took my hand and said, I didn't know, but I do now. Thank you. Aunt Rosalind never apologized, but she didn't say another word to me either. I think silence was all she had left after that. And Marcus, he disappeared halfway through dessert. No one missed him. That night, when I tucked Liam into bed, he looked at me through sleepy eyes and said, Did I do the right thing? I smiled and brushed a curl off his forehead. You did the bravest thing, I said, and I'll never forget it. He nodded once like that was all he needed to hear. I sat in the living room long after he fell asleep, still in that navy dress, hair falling out of its clip, feet aching. But for the first time in a long time, my heart felt full. Not because I finally got the recognition, not because people clapped or whispered nice things, but because I had spent years pouring into others, into my brother, into my family. And for once, someone had poured back into me. Even if it came from the tiniest voice in the room, there's something powerful about being seen, truly seen. Not for what you wear or how loud you are, but for what you carry, what you give. And it took an 8-year-old boy with a juice pouch and a full heart to remind a room full of grown-ups what love really looks like. It looks like sacrifice, quiet effort, showing up when no one asks you to. It looks like picking up empty cups in a room that's already celebrating, knowing you're the reason they're celebrating at all. And now I walk a little taller, not because I'm any different, but because I finally believe what my son already knew. I was never small. I was never invisible. I was just underestimated. And if anyone ever forgets that again, I've got a kid who knows how to find a microphone.